I just want to make a few general comments on the bill, and I've no real strong opinions one way or the other on the merits or otherwise of it. But the government say it's important and address a real gap in legislation dealing with technical issues around the impact of COVID on companies' legislation. And that's all good and all very well. Congratulations to the government on moving quickly to address this gap and on dealing quickly with the difficulties facing companies during the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, congratulations on all the efforts made over the last few months with many pieces of very difficult legislation, some of them over 100 pages long, some of them very, very complex. But what it does is it proves that where there's a political way, where there's a political will rather, there's a legislative way. I put in a very short amendment to this bill that's been ruled out of order. Similar short amendment was put in by Sinn Féin, borrowed from a Sinn Féin bill that is languishing in the legislative graveyard since the last Dáil. It's not a complex amendment, but it would have made a very, very real difference to many thousands of workers and their families. Workers in this country are facing a tsunami of redundancy in the coming months, and thousands will be hit by insolvency and by layoffs. And that amendment sought to give those workers some added protection and to place workers ahead of debtors and creditors in an insolvency situation. However, that seems to be irrelevant to this House. 5 years on since the Cleary's workers were victims of greed and mugging by corporate thugs, 4 years on since the Duffy-Cahill report, and while the Duffy-Cahill report didn't explicitly recommend a reordering of preferential creditors, it did cover in detail one measure that might give some comfort to workers facing crises like this in their lives. It did actually say that workers should be put ahead in employment legislation and other acts of other creditors. But since then, what do the houses of the Oireachtas do? Zilch. Absolutely nothing. Nada has been done for the workers. There is no intention of Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael to put the interests of workers ahead of the interests of companies. And stripped of the rhetoric, it's very, very clear that they don't really give a damn. Debenhams workers are over 110 days on strike now and have been victims of a tactical insolvency, or as one of the workers put it, this is a contrived situation. They're collateral damage in a war between a consortium of debtors, including our very own Bank of Ireland, and immensely rich stakeholders. Assets and stocks and figures and balance sheets are moved around like pieces on a chessboard, while workers' lives and the lives of their families are being seriously damaged. These are workers who've given decades of service and made millions and millions in profits for the companies and their shareholders. But this is not a political priority for this government, nor was it for the last government. Not in this Act or in any other way do workers in situations of contrived insolvency qualify as an emergency. I'll just finish by saying we fully support them. We know that they won't go away, that they'll continue their fight, and that fight will be heard and will make a difference for all workers. If we had an Oireachtas that cared about workers, their families and their lives, that amendment would be allowed to remain in, and we would be now discussing it in detail instead of ruling out of order a simple, non-complex measure that could help to deal with this.
Deputy